And welcome into this first installment of the JPJ Report. Alongside Director of News Content for VirginiaSports.com, Jeff White, I am the voice of the Cavaliers, Dave Koehn, as we take our microphones across the street. Yes, of course, still football season, but we are getting closer and closer to basketball season as we come to you from John Paul Jones Arena. On Sunday, we had our first real look at this team with the intra-squad scrimmage, the blue and white game, and we got a chance to see 6 new faces on this team this season. And what was your takeaway from what we saw yesterday?
My first takeaway is that there's incredible enthusiasm for basketball here at JPJ and in Charlottesville. It was a terrific crowd for this event. A lot of energy in the building. There's obviously a lot of excitement for the season. The other takeaway initially was that it's weird looking out at the UVA basketball team and not seeing Malcolm Brogdon, Mike Tobey, Anthony Gill, and that crew. This is a new-look team. There are a lot of familiar faces, but there are 6 new ones, 4 true freshmen, a redshirt freshman, and Austin Nichols, who sat out last year after transferring from Memphis. So this is a team I think that's going to have to form its identity as the season goes along.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. When you look at all the different faces, one thing that was noticeable, look, we could go back 4 years ago, 5 years ago, it would have been hard to even put on one of these intra-squad scrimmages just on numbers alone. But the depth of this team, it's a resounding number of different faces that you can turn to. That can be a blessing. It can be a curse, because where does everybody fit in? What is their role? That figures to take time this year.
Coach Bennett has already said you can't play 13 guys. There are 13 scholarship players on the team. So there's some hard decisions, I think, for the coaching staff, because there's not a lot of separation among a lot of the players. You don't necessarily have a Malcolm Brogdon who's head and shoulders over the next player at his position. So I think it's just all going to take some time to shake out.
Now, while some of those faces that we've grown so accustomed to seeing are gone, the reality is the culture of this program is sound. It's in place. Virginia is the only team in the country to have a 1 seed in 2 of the last 3 years going into the tournament. They're one of 2 teams in the country that finished in the AP Top 10. So obviously, amazing accolades over the last 3 years. You wonder how much of that is translated into this new group of players that weren't maybe a part of those programs, but does that get passed down?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I think there's a strong culture here, that a foundation has been put in place, and there are expectations when these guys come into the program that the upperclassmen and the older guys have, that this is how you conduct yourself on the court, off the court. This is a program where defense is a huge priority, and I don't think they come here not knowing that, but then when they do arrive, you've seen practices with Coach Bennett. He holds his players to an extremely high standard, and he doesn't care about preseason rankings or what the team has done in the past. He expects them to do it the right way now and going forward.
And we've seen some of these guys not only in the blue-white scrimmage on Sunday, but also we've seen them in practices leading up to the season. You were obviously in Europe with these guys. Some observations that you've had amongst the new faces. Let's start with that first-year class that has a lot of talent, but short on experience and certainly understanding this defense, to your point.
And I think if you look at the 4 true freshmen, what sticks out first is they're a very talented group, very skilled group with the ball. They're all on the lean side, some more than others. So these guys are going to have to physically grow over the course of their careers. But it's just a very talented group. I'm not sure there's been a class here that shot the ball as well collectively as this group. Jay Huff can shoot, Kyle Guy can, Ty Jerome can, and DeAndre Hunter can. And DeAndre's coming off an ankle injury, so he was a little rusty yesterday, but I think with all the guys, you saw flashes of what they could do. Kyle Guy is a pure scorer. Ty Jerome sees the floor well, has a terrific basketball IQ, and Jay Huff is just a really intriguing player. I mean, he's 7 foot. He shoots the ball like a smaller player. He rebounds well. He's very skinny right now, and he's going to have to get stronger.
Yeah, he has a tremendous ceiling, as does Mamadi Diakite, who we haven't even talked about. Essentially, he's a first-year player, although having played in the system in the offseason, or in last season for that matter, as a redshirt. But the reality is very young, very raw. But one guy you know what you're going to get from, London Parentes. He put it on display again on Sunday, but his role will change as well. The other big question is, can some of these other players, the Devin Halls, the Mariel Shayocks, Isaiah Wilkins, can they grow into that next step in their progression? Mariel Shayok has actually shaved 20 pounds off of his frame as he tries to get into better shape. But a lot of interesting storylines around those guys that are going to have to raise their level.
Those guys, I think you could accurately describe them as role players last year. There's an opportunity for them to be more than role players this year, and for the team to do what it wants to do, it will need at least a couple of those guys to do more and be consistent night in and night out. It was okay last season if Devin had a big game one night and maybe not so big the next night because maybe Darius Thompson or Mariel would step forward. But just with the makeup of this team, they need to be consistent, and I think they know that. Collectively, they have a lot of experience. It's just time for them to kind of step forward in terms of production and be consistent.
And lastly, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the newest, shiniest weapon in the arsenal, so to speak, Austin Nichols, the transfer from Memphis. He sat out last season, redshirt player. Now he gets a chance to shine. The prognosticators across the country are speaking his praises, but he still has to prove that he can transition those numbers and the accolades that he had at Memphis here to an entirely new system in a different role at Virginia.
I think he'd be the first to tell you that the system here is different than the one he left at Memphis. Maybe expectations are different, particularly on the defensive end. So he has to prove to the coaching staff that he can be consistent, game in, game out. But in terms of physical ability, his length, his wingspan, his ability to block shots, score around the basket, he's a terrifically talented player. And you see that just looking at the numbers. But in terms of raw talent, I think he's a tremendous prospect, as is Mamadi Diakite, who you mentioned. And those two guys are long, can jump, can alter shots, can get after it defensively. They just have to be integrated into the Virginia system and the Virginia way.
Certainly will be a new-look team in 2016 and 17 for Virginia men's basketball. Hard to believe that we are just over 2 weeks away from that season opener in Greensboro. For Jeff White, I'm Dave Koehn. We hope you enjoyed this edition of the JPJ Report.